Steel bends, glass shatters, and silence follows. 800 vessels rest in a freezing midnight black graveyard at the bottom of the Southern Ocean, marking the final resting place of 200,000 souls, turning the Drake Passage into a 600-mile-wide mechanical grinder where three of the planet's greatest oceans collide, forcing 182 million cubic meters of water per second through a bottleneck of pure, untemed chaos. We navigate the globe with satellite precision and reinforced hulls, treating the ocean as a conquered frontier. Yet here, our most advanced technology is frequently rendered obsolete in seconds. What hidden physics govern this desolate threshold? And why does this single coordinate on the map continue to defy every rule of modern engineering? The battle between human ambition and the primal forces of the Earth is far from over. Stay with us as we journey into the heart of the Drake Passage to confront the primal chaos that renders our boldest innovations obsolete. Watch until the end to discover why this frozen, relentless stretch of water remains the one frontier human engineering simply cannot conquer. Most people hear the word passage and visualize a manageable corridor, a shortcut between two landmasses. In maritime reality, the Drake Passage is a violent 500 to 600 mile wide collision zone where the Atlantic, Pacific, and Southern Oceans merge into one merciless system of pure planetary energy. To understand why this stretch of water remains the most tempestuous on Earth, one must view a global map not as political borders, but as a blueprint of untamed fluid dynamics. Here, nature has engineered a perfect storm of geography, tectonic history, deep-sea topography, and atmospheric meteorology. When a vessel clears the jagged cliffs of Cape Horn at the southernmost tip of South America, it abandons coastal shelter for a desolate abyss stretching toward the South Shetland Islands and the Antarctic Peninsula. In this unforgiving wilderness, there are no islands to act as a buffer, no bays for retreat, and no sanctuary. For roughly 2 days, the average transit for a modern vessel, there is nowhere to hide. The sea dictates the terms, demanding split-second reactions. Here, maritime technology, from 16th century wooden galleons to 21st century stabilized expedition cruisers, is revealed as a fragile shell of human ego floating atop an untamable planetary force. The terrifying majesty of the Drake Passage is the result of ancient tectonic movements. Between 17 and 49 million years ago, tectonic plates shifted, separating the South American continent from the northern tip of Antarctica. This immense oceanic gap allowed a nascent ocean current to break through continental barriers and begin an endless, circular journey around the bottom of the globe. Since that defining geological moment, this current has acted as a massive thermal barrier, isolating Antarctica from warmer subtropical waters and locking the southern continent into permanent glaciation. In essence, the Drake Passage is the heart of Earth's modern climate system, operating as the primary cooling mechanism that keeps the vast Antarctic ice sheet intact. Were this narrow gap ever blocked or significantly altered, the thermal barrier would fail, triggering a catastrophic, irreversible shift in global ocean circulation and atmospheric temperatures. The engine driving the chaos of the Drake Passage is the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, ACC. For millions of years, the ACC has circled Antarctica without hitting a single continental landmass. Every other major ocean current eventually collides with a continent, forcing the water to slow down, redirect, or dissipate its kinetic energy. The ACC encounters no such resistance. Driven by relentless, crushing westerly winds, It reigns as the most powerful current on Earth. Data from the French Oceanographic Institute reveals that the ACC moves between 134 and 182 million cubic meters of water per second, equivalent to 5,000 Amazon rivers flowing simultaneously through a single channel, a flow rate 100 times greater than all the world's rivers combined. The Drake Passage represents the absolute narrowest point of the ACC's entire 25,000-kilometer planetary loop. It is the geographic equivalent of pinching a garden hose at maximum pressure. The water rapidly accelerates. Massive hydrostatic pressure builds within the water column, and the ocean surface erupts into a hyper-intensified churn. Layered directly over this oceanic bottleneck is a permanent atmospheric engine of fierce winds. The Drake Passage sits squarely within 40 to 60 degrees south latitude, a region dominated by persistent, low-pressure storm systems. Earning terrifying titles from generations of sailors, these latitudes are known as the Roaring 40s, the Furious 50s, and the Screaming 60s. Because no continental landmass exists at these latitudes to block the wind or calm the swell, low-pressure storms travel uninterrupted across the vast Pacific before slamming into the passage. By the time these fronts arrive, their wind gradients tighten rapidly, causing local wind speeds to routinely exceed 60 miles per hour. Within hours, conditions escalate from a manageable sea into a battle for survival. The weather shifts with such volatile speed that captains have mere seconds to react before their vessels are overwhelmed. The brutal combination of atmospheric storms and oceanic currents creates an irregular, unpredictable sea state. Long-period swells, generated thousands of miles away by distant Pacific storms, arrive at the passage with deeply established kinetic energy. When local, wind-driven seas generated by the Furious 50s ride directly atop these massive, long-traveling swells, the two wave systems rarely align. Instead, they intersect from wildly different angles. This cross-sea phenomenon strips the ocean's surface of any predictable rhythm, destroying a vessel's predictable rolling motion and compromising tactical control. Wave heights commonly exceed 20 to 30 feet under normal conditions. During intense low-pressure systems, waves easily rise past 40 to 50 feet. Mariners recognize that the passage possesses two distinct moods: the deceptive, rare calmness of the Drake Lake, where high-pressure systems briefly smooth the horizon, and the violent turbulence of the Drake Shake. The transition from lake to shake can occur in just a few hours. Beneath the keel, the physical scale of the Drake floor is haunting. The seabed plunges to an average depth of 1,1000 feet, dropping in abyssal trenches to nearly 15,000 feet. If a ship were to founder here, the wreckage would take the better part of an hour to drift through the freezing, pitch-black water column before settling onto the seabed. This immense depth allows long-period waves to maintain their terrifying momentum without breaking early, as there are no shallow continental shelves to bleed off their energy. However, the seafloor is not a flat plain. It is a treacherous landscape of jagged fracture zones, submerged, spreading ridges, and seamounts. When the deep, massive current of the ACC strikes these sudden subterranean mountain ranges, the dense water column is forced violently upward, sending turbulence to the surface and twisting waves into erratic shapes. It is within this high-energy environment that sudden rogue waves occur through a phenomenon known as dispersive focusing. Studies from institutions like the Russian Academy of Sciences suggest that the interaction between fast-moving currents and uneven topography focuses separate wave components to converge at the exact same point and time. When these energies merge, they erupt into a singular, vertical wall of water. These monstrous waves can reach 40 to 50 feet, the height of a 4-story building, and appear with no warning. A rogue wave in the Drake has a lifespan of barely 2 minutes, but it is more than enough to split a hull, shatter reinforced bridge windows, or flood internal compartments before radar or watch officers can react. The physical realities of the Drake Passage have transformed it into one of the most prolific maritime graveyards in history. Across 3 centuries of sail, historians estimate that roughly 800 ships and over 2,000,000 lives have been claimed by these waters. Most losses went unrecorded. There were no coastlines to run aground on, no coastal settlements for shelter, and no rescue stations. Before wireless radio emerged in the early 20th century, a ship could vanish into the screaming storms and simply cease to exist, leaving no wreckage, no final log entry, and no graves. Compounding this terror is the constant presence of glacial ice, huge tabular icebergs breaking off from Antarctic ice shelves drift northward into the shipping lanes. While large bergs are easily detected by modern radar, the true danger lies in smaller fragments, growlers, and bergy bits. These dense, low-floating chunks of ice hide perfectly in the deep troughs of towering 30-foot waves, remaining invisible to radar and human eyes until impact. Furthermore, water temperatures hover near freezing. If a hull fails, human survival time in the open water is measured in mere minutes. For 5 centuries, ships of wood, iron, and steel have entered this stretch of ocean. Some crossed without incident. Hundreds of others vanished. The Drake Passage remains a crossroad of oceans, where modern engineering must still bow to natural scale, a place where the water does not respect human technology and never negotiates. Long before modern satellite telemetry and ice-strengthened hulls reshaped polar transit, the first Europeans to enter these tempestuous latitudes did so without charts, without meteorological forecasts, and without the slightest inkling of what lay beyond the frozen horizon. Ironically, they were not searching for the Drake Passage. They were instead violently rejected by the cramped coastal routes they sought and blown directly into its ferocious embrace. What they stumbled into amid freezing spray and shattered rigging would fundamentally destroy centuries of European cartographical dogma and reshape global navigation forever. This historical unmasking began in the year 1525, an era when the passage did not yet possess a name on any European map. A fleet of Spanish ships was meticulously tracing the rugged, uncharted coast of South America, desperately searching for a navigable route to the Pacific Ocean via the newly discovered Strait of Magellan. Among these vessels was a fragile caravel belonging to the Loaiza expedition, commanded by the Spanish captain Francisco de Hosas. Just as his ship cleared the eastern entrance of the strait, a ferocious, unyielding storm struck with the characteristic suddenness of the southern latitudes. The tempest drove his wooden vessel far to the south, much farther than planned, and significantly deeper into the unknown than any existing charts suggested was physically possible. Through the blinding sea spray and howling winds, the exhausted crew looked out and saw something that defied contemporary geographical belief: an expanse of completely open water. At that time, European cartographers firmly believed in Terra Australis Incognita, a theoretical, vast southern continent depicted on maps as directly connecting to South America to balance the globe. De Hosas had not intended to explore a new oceanic corridor. He had been forced into it by dead reckoning, relying on basic compass headings and mere estimates of speed in an era when longitude could not yet be accurately measured at sea. Though his crew miraculously survived the storm and turned north again, Spanish sources subsequently referred to these waters south of Cape Horn as Mar de Hosas, the Sea of Hosas, though the name failed to spread beyond Spanish circles. Half a century later, in 1578, another fleet entered these perilous latitudes, this time flying under the flag of an English privateer and driven by entirely different motives. Sir Francis Drake had successfully navigated through the Strait of Magellan with 3 ships: his flagship, the Golden Hind, the Marigold, and the Elizabeth. His mission was strictly mercenary, raiding wealthy Spanish interests along the unsuspecting Pacific coast. However, the moment the fleet exited the western mouth of the strait into the open Pacific, the true fury of the southern system struck them head-on. The Marigold was instantly lost with all hands, swallowed by the towering seas, while the Elizabeth was battered so severely that she turned back toward England in retreat. Drake's flagship, the Golden Hind, was driven relentlessly south by the violent storm into waters no English vessel had ever intentionally charted or imagined. Like de Hoses before him, Drake had not set out to define a new global passage, but the storm pushed him into the vast open ocean south of Tierra del Fuego. This terrifying experience confirmed a profound geographical reality. South America did not connect to a mythical southern continent, and an open sea of immense scale existed below it. A navigable, albeit far more violent route existed around Cape Horn that was vastly wider than the cramped, unpredictable Strait of Magellan. Drake survived the encounter and continued his raiding voyage north, never mapping the passage in detail or formally discovering it in the modern sense. Yet, English accounts permanently associated his name with these treacherous southern waters, and over time, the gap between continents became universally known in the English-speaking world as the Drake Passage. The profound irony remains that neither de Hoses nor Drake went looking for this gateway. Both were helplessly blown into it by storms they could neither predict nor control, utterly unaware of the titanic planetary forces moving through that stretch of water. It was not until nearly 40 years after Drake's accidental transit, in 1616, that any mariner possessed the audacity to sail into this terrifying corridor intentionally, transforming the Drake from an accidental trap into a calculated route. Seeking to break the strict, heavily enforced trade monopolies controlled by Spain and bypass the guarded Strait of Magellan, Dutch navigators Willem Schouten and Jacob Lemaire set out to find a brand new commercial route into the Pacific. Steering south of Tierra del Fuego, they discovered and named a new, brutal promontory at the absolute edge of the South American continent, Cape Horn. From there, Schouten did something unprecedented. He did not let a storm decide his fate. He deliberately turned his helm and steered his ship straight into the open ocean corridor south of the continent, successfully navigating the full route through choice rather than chance. This historic voyage proved definitively to the maritime world that merchant vessels could intentionally round Cape Horn through the open sea. Yet, proving it could be done did not make the passage safe. It merely meant that more ships would try. Once this gateway was unlocked, it became the ultimate high-stakes gamble for global commerce, drawing in naval squadrons, whalers, and merchantmen who chose the violent, wider waters of the Drake over the narrow, treacherous straits to the north, accepting the terrifying reality that as traffic increased in this unyielding sea, so too would the catastrophic loss of human life. Recovered journals from merchant vessels provide haunting, first-hand glimpses into a veritable hell on Earth. One anonymous entry from an 1,840 merchantmen captures the raw horror of the Drake Shake with terrifying clarity. The cold is not merely a temperature, it is a physical weight that shatters the spirit. Many of the men have lost fingers to the frostbite, and I watched the ship's surgeon remove them with a rusted knife, the men screaming into the gale because there was no anesthetic to be had. This was a world where pain was constant and death was often a mercy. The operating conditions were beyond the comprehension of the modern mind. Sailors were forced to work in near total darkness, high above the churning foam, clinging to rigging at heights of 80 to 90 feet above the deck. Their bare, frost-bitten hands clawed at ropes coated in thick layers of ice, struggling to reef sails while the mast swayed violently in the black void. A single slip meant an instantaneous, icy death in the freezing swells below, a fall that often went unnoticed by the crew on deck, drowned out entirely by the deafening roar of 60-knot winds. Beyond the physical agony, these men faced the psychological decay of southern solitude. They possessed the crushing knowledge that they were thousands of miles from the nearest port, trapped in a mountainous wilderness of water, a realization that fractured many men's minds long before the elements eventually claimed their bodies. Perhaps the most harrowing testament to the lethality of this passage is the fate of the Spanish ship of the line San Telmo in 1819. Launched in 1788, this formidable 74-gun vessel served as the flagship of a Spanish squadron under the command of Brigadier Rosendo Porlier y Esteguieta. She was tasked with a critical mission, transporting 644 souls, troops, and sailors alike to Callao, Peru, to reinforce colonial forces fighting against the sweeping independence movements in Spanish America. But the Drake Passage had other plans. On the 2nd of September 1819, while maneuvering south of Cape Horn, the San Telmo was brutally assaulted by storms so severe that her heavy rudder was torn away and her massive masts shattered like matchsticks. She vanished into the swirling mist, and for nearly 200 years, her final resting place remained one of maritime history's deepest, most chilling mysteries. However, modern historical consensus, bolstered by physical evidence, paints a conclusion far more tragic than simple foundering. Shortly after the disaster, British sealer William Smith discovered wreckage and debris on the jagged, uncharted shores of Livingston Island in the South Shetland Islands, a landmass sitting firmly on the Antarctic continental shelf. The existence of San Telmo Island, located off the northern coast of Livingston, serves as a permanent geographical marker of this tragedy. The heart-wrenching hypothesis, which lingers as a dark legacy of the Drake, is that the San Telmo did not merely sink into the deep. It is highly probable that the vessel was driven onto these desolate shores. If any of the 644 men survived the initial wreckage and scrambled onto that frozen coast, they would have been the first human beings to ever set foot on the Antarctic continent, only to face a far crueler fate. Imagine their situation, huddled on a barren, ice-choked shore with no fire, no hope of rescue, and the nearest civilization thousands of miles across the most treacherous ocean on the planet. The graveyard of the Drake Passage claimed them in the most agonizing way imaginable, through a slow, silent, and inevitable surrender to the encroaching Antarctic winter. They remain there today, the ghost guardians of a land that is as profoundly indifferent to human suffering as the sea that led them to it. The tragedy of the San Telmo rippled through history in strange ways. Even months later, during the lead-up to the capture of Valdivia in February 1820, revolutionary forces used the memory of the lost fleet as a psychological weapon, tricking the Spanish garrison into believing they were part of the San Telmo convoy to facilitate an amphibious assault. Furthermore, the mystery of the survivors has sparked decades of speculation, including the 1985 discovery of a skull on Yamana Beach, which some have debated might be linked to the lost crew. Yet, it was from this very hellish crucible that swallowed the San Telmo and shattered tens of thousands of wooden hulls that maritime history also witnessed the absolute pinnacle of human endurance. When it comes to ultimate survival against the sheer brutality of the Southern Ocean, no story can ever surpass the legendary chapter written nearly a century later in 1916. After the heavily reinforced expedition ship, Endurance was completely trapped and mercilessly crushed by the relentless pressure of pack ice in the distant Weddell Sea. Sir Ernest Shackleton and 5 of his men found themselves in a state of absolute desperation. Stranded amidst a vast, inescapable ocean, they made a mad but solitary choice for survival. They launched the James Caird, a fragile, open, 22-foot lifeboat. Their objective was to defy fate itself, charting an unthinkable 800 nautical mile course across the most desolate, violent waters on Earth, where the Drake Passage converges, aiming to reach South Georgia Island, home to the region's only active whaling stations. For 16 consecutive days and nights, their tiny wooden craft was tossed like a leaf in the wind, battered relentlessly by monstrous, building-sized waves and the freezing, bone-chilling blizzards of the Southern Ocean. Clad in permanently salt-soaked gear, their bodies ravaged by hypothermia, and with the boundary between life and death measured in the blink of an eye, they steadfastly held the tiller against destiny. Driven by an iron will that defied all biological limits, Shackleton and his men miraculously set foot on the island, penning humanity's defiant answer to the cruelty of nature. This stood not only as one of the greatest nautical feats in human history, but it also paved the way for the miraculous, successful rescue of the entire remaining crew of the Endurance without the loss of a single human life, a triumphant finale that illuminated the darkness of a sea that refuses to negotiate. Looking back at those catastrophic shipwrecks from long ago and contrasting them with the advanced engineering of today, it would be a profound mistake to believe that satellite navigation, high-tensile steel alloys, and complex stabilization systems have finally relegated the perils of the ocean to the pages of history. We look at today's colossal, heavily reinforced vessels and easily default to a false sense of security, complacently believing that humanity has evolved far beyond the primal threats that once swallowed the wooden hulls of antiquity. Yet, in these volatile waters, the ocean operates on a scale and intensity that is entirely different, continually exposing the naked limits of our design standards. Even in our most sophisticated technological era, the Drake Passage stands as a stark reminder that human innovation has never been, and will never be, an absolute shield against the raw power of the planet. The fundamental danger lies in a phenomenon known in naval architecture as hogging and sagging. A modern ship, sometimes exceeding 1,000 feet in length, functions essentially as a gargantuan steel beam. Under normal conditions, the downward force of the ship's gravity is perfectly balanced by the upward force of buoyancy across the hull. But the Drake Passage is anything but normal. When a massive wave crest moves beneath the midship, the vessel's center is thrust upward, while the bow and stern droop. A state called hogging the ship bends like a banana. Conversely, if the ship spans 2 wave crests with the bow and stern, the midsection is left suspended over a trough with no support, causing the vessel to sag violently downward under the immense weight of its own mass. Should the wavelength of the sea match the length of the ship, the longitudinal bending stress reaches its absolute maximum, a force capable of snapping a steel vessel in half. And what I just described is not mere conjecture. It is the brutal reality of the maritime world. Consider the 2013 loss of the MOL Comfort, a post-Panamax marvel of naval engineering. At 1,036 feet long and 149 feet wide, this container ship was a titan of modern logistics, built in 2008 to carry 8,110 TEU, constructed by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, MHI, and utilizing 470 megapascals high-tensile steel. It represented the pinnacle of Japanese shipbuilding. Yet, on the 17th of June 2013, while navigating the Indian Ocean, this state-of-the-art vessel suffered a catastrophic structural failure. Despite its massive dimensions and reinforced 90mm steel plates designed to mitigate stress, the hull cracked midship during adverse weather. In a terrifying, slow-motion failure, the ship snapped cleanly in two. The consequences were immediate and total. 26 crew members were forced into lifeboats, and over 7,000 containers, the largest cargo loss in a single maritime event, were consigned to the abyss. Despite salvage attempts, both halves eventually sank to depths of 3,000 to 4,000 meters, taking nearly 3,100 tons of fuel with them. Subsequent investigations into the sister ships revealed that even cutting-edge steel, designed to save weight while maintaining strength, could not account for the sheer magnitude of longitudinal bending stresses encountered in heavy seas. If a vessel engineered with such scientific rigor can suffer a structural collapse in open water, the risk in the Drake Passage is magnified exponentially. When the MOL Comfort failed, it proved that our state-of-the-art designs are still fragile shells when challenged by the raw, untamable physics of the deep sea. Maritime authorities often cite regulations such as SOLAS, Safety of Life at Sea, or MARPOL, as our ultimate defense, yet these standards are frequently calibrated for a version of the ocean that simply does not exist in the Drake. The November 2022 incident involving the Viking Polaris serves as a chilling case study. This was an advanced expedition cruise ship featuring an ice-class hull and sophisticated stabilizers, intended to be the pinnacle of safe Antarctic travel. While performing an emergency medical evacuation, the ship was struck by a rogue wave southeast of Cape Horn with such sheer kinetic energy that passengers equated the sound and tremor to hitting an iceberg. The impact shattered the windows of 7 passenger cabins, allowing broken glass and frigid seawater to explode into the living spaces, tragically claiming the life of a 62-year-old American passenger. Norwegian accident investigators later delivered a sobering verdict. The ship's windows met every existing maritime design standard, but those rules were never written to account for the force of breaking waves striking the side of a vessel. The engineering was compliant, yet the reality of the Drake proved the standards to be hollow. For the captain on the bridge, the reality is even more harrowing, as technology often offers a false sense of control. On the 7th of December 2010, the Clelia II cruise ship found itself trapped in 30 to 40-foot seas with 55 miles per hour's winds. When a rogue wave tore an exterior handrail from the ship and slammed it directly into the bridge windshield, it shattered the reinforced glass and obliterated the radar and communication systems. The Clea II was suddenly blind and limping through the darkness with only one functional engine in one of the most remote corners of the planet, forced to rely on the National Geographic Explorer to shadow her until she could reach the safety of Ushuaia. These moments are defined by split-second decisions where intuition, born of surviving the Drake shake, must replace any manual. From a forensic view, if we could slow down the motion of a 40-foot wall of water striking a hull, we would see the steel buckle not just from direct impact, but from the cumulative hydraulic pressure of millions of tons of water hitting an area never designed to absorb that energy. It is a terrifying realization that our boldest innovations are, in the Drake, nothing more than a fragile shell of human ambition. We design ships to be masters of the ocean, but in the Drake Passage, they are merely uninvited guests. And the ocean is a host that has never once offered us a guarantee of survival. The Drake Passage is the world's most expansive and haunting museum of maritime tragedy. Beneath those treacherous, churning swells lies a sprawling, silent graveyard, where vessels ranging from 16th century Spanish galleons to 20th century steel-hulled steamers remain perfectly preserved in the freezing, anaerobic depths. The extreme cold and bone-crushing hydrostatic pressure at these depths act as a natural, impenetrable vault, keeping the scattered debris of human ambition intact, a stark, chilling contrast to tropical shipwrecks that succumb to decay and rot within mere decades. This is a collection of failures that serves as a grim testament to a fundamental truth. In the Drake, once a vessel is claimed by the sea, it is truly erased from the world above, left to settle in a realm where time itself seems to have stopped. To truly understand why this specific stretch of water is unique in its lethality, one must contrast it with other notorious maritime hotspots such as the North Sea or the rugged Alaskan coast. While the North Sea is undeniably vicious, it is geographically punctuated by landmasses, shallow continental banks, and an intricate network of sheltered harbors that provide a critical window for emergency refuge. This geographical isolation creates a terrifying reality for modern search and rescue operations. They are, in every practical sense, attempting an impossible mission. The nearest substantial support facilities are located in Ushuaia, Argentina, or along the coast of Chile, often requiring days of transit across the most violent seas on the planet. Even the nearby Antarctic research stations, while physically closer, are ill-equipped to handle the specialized, heavy-lift salvage operations required to recover or assist a massive vessel in open, deep water. In the Drake, rescue is rarely a matter of hours. It is a desperate matter of sheer luck, and in these unforgiving latitudes, luck is a commodity in extremely short supply. Yet, despite this omnipresent danger, the passage has paradoxically become a high-traffic corridor. Today, over 1,000,000 tourists flock to these waters annually, all hoping to catch a fleeting glimpse of the Antarctic frontier. Veteran captains often speak of the Drake Lottery, a gamble that defines every transit. 70% of the time, travelers encounter Drake Lake, where the sea is unnervingly, deceptively calm, acting as a mirror that reflects the vast, icy horizon. But for the remaining 30%, the ocean turns, and you are subjected to the Drake Shake, where the sea reminds you exactly why it remains the most untamable force on the planet. Amidst this rising tide of tourism, the real, foundational work continues in the shadows. Scientists are stationed here permanently, tirelessly measuring the pulse of the ACC. They understand that this current is not merely moving water, it is the planet's primary thermostat. Any measurable change in the temperature or salinity of the Southern Ocean will have immediate, cascading, and global consequences. These scientists act as silent observers, documenting the slow, massive, and inexorable shifts in a system that operates on a scale vastly larger than our human-centric timescales. As we conclude our journey and look back over that gray, churning expanse, the Drake Passage serves as the ultimate humbling reminder. In the grand, indifferent scale of geological time, humanity is nothing more than a temporary, statistical error. Our radar systems, our precise satellite navigation, and our reinforced steel hulls are impressive feats of engineering, but they are not the masters of this domain. The ocean does not negotiate with human progress. and it certainly does not care about our pride. As you contemplate these cold, relentless waters, you are forced to ask, is our quest to dominate the natural world a sign of our advancement, or merely a symptom of our profound arrogance? Do we truly belong here, or are we simply persistent intruders in a place that has been and will always remain entirely beyond our control? Finally, before we conclude today's journey, thank you for bearing witness to these cold, relentless waters with me. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on our future deep dives. Do you have a theory on the San Telmo? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. We remember the 2,000 souls claimed by these waves over centuries, including the 644 lost on the San Telmo in 1819. May their stories never fade. Until we meet again in the next chapter on Maritime Lore, stay safe.